Hi everyone, it's me again. It's Charlie, and it's weird to say good to see you again since I can't see you, but that leads me to my first comment. I looked at the first skills lecture and I noticed that my eyes go all over the place. I look up and down and so on. So I just want to orient you that what I'm doing is I'm sitting here looking at a computer and I'm looking at the little dot at the top of the computer where the camera is. And it's kind of weird to look for a long time at this little dot. And but I'm going to be trying to do that because it looks to you like I'm looking at you then. Um, Whereas there's a tendency for me to look actually at the computer itself and see me and my office, but it's no point. So I'll try to look at the thing, but please forgive me if I look around. Second comment I want to make is now that we're moving into learning what the skills are, I just want to make a pitch to you that with every single skill I teach, you try to convince your mind that this is the skill you've been waiting for. This is the skill you need because it's hard to change patterns of habits and insert skills or modify things with skills. It's just hard. And even if you change it briefly, it's easy for it to flip back and revert to the usual pattern. So I want you to be trying to learn these skills. So you really kind of have to act as if you really need this skill because I truly don't think people really learn things unless they really think they need them. So if it requires behavioral change. So I want to just encourage you that way so that you get to know these skills as well as you can. And that includes practice, 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 of course. Okay, now I want to put up another little visual here, and I want to do it better than last time now that I watched myself, because you may have noticed that I'm a pretty low-tech operation here, and if you didn't notice that, then you're lower tech than I am. But I kind of like it like that. I feel it's more flexible for me. It's more natural for me. So I'm going to do it that way and try to make up for it in other ways. Okay, so this is a little diagram to say here are the problems we treat with DBT skills and the relationships between those types of problems. I'm going to put this up and then try to organize it so that you can see it. And then I'm going to sit back a little away from it and talk to you, orient you to this. I find this a very helpful model. Okay, so let's start this way. Let's start with emotional problems at the top of this kind of clock, and we're going to go counterclockwise around the clock. The emotional problems, by that I really mean that when you experience a certain emotion, an emotion gets triggered in you. It gets into your system, which is your brain and your body, that you aren't very good at regulating that emotion. It either gets overshot, so you get angry and you break something that you regret later, or you undershoot, you over control, so you get angry and you back off and you withdraw and you don't say anything and you may isolate yourself. You feel afraid of something, whether it's warranted or not objectively, and you get terrified and you go into a terror state and you run away from something that may or may not actually be dangerous. Or you over control your fear and you go into doing things that are high risk without feeling appropriate levels of fear. So, and the other part of emotional problems is the rapid changes, ups and downs that can make you feel kind of crazy because from one hour to another, you're in very different moods. Okay? A lot of problems follow from this, but this is just a preliminary introduction to it. We'll be back to it later. You'll see how. Now, when you have a lot of difficulties managing emotions, they often, or perhaps mostly, come into relationships or grow out of relationships. So it results in, or it's part and parcel of relationship problems. You have fear that the other person will leave you. You have easily triggered anger and irritability because the other person wasn't quite the way you wanted. You feel ashamed to a deep degree because you disappointed the other person or you didn't do what you think is the right thing. And you start to sometimes avoid conflicts, and therefore you end up with more and more being sort of pushed under the rug in a relationship until it blows up. And either you get physical symptoms or psychological symptoms or break up the relationship. And you kind of have a tumultuous and intense time. Or maybe you've been through that and you've gotten to where you just stay away from the relationship, but you have a kind of aching loneliness. So lots of relationship problems, and they can generate emotional problems. So ideally, I would have drawn that arrow in both directions. If you spend time with emotional and relationship problems, that kind of two types of problems stew, and then you discover ways to turn down the heat or get yourself out of the emotions, out of the relationship problems, and it's relatively easy. It's natural to form an addiction or addictive type attachment to those behaviors, whether it be alcohol that helps you kind of like turn things off, down, or numb them out, or drugs which help you either feel better or feel, get high or take the edge off of some emotions, or you harm yourself, which for some people tends to turn down emotions rather rapidly. It makes it easier to cope with them, but now you have a lifestyle based on cutting yourself. And lots of other things about bad driving, interpersonal problems that are extreme, violence, etc. So you end up with action problems to solve the combination of emotional relationship problems. Now you have a three type of problem stew, and it generally easily gives rise to thinking problems. So for instance, there's one sort of whole set of thinking problems that have to do with being mistrustful of other people after everything you've been through that's painful and choppy, and relationships have been difficult, and maybe you've been invalidated in your life, and you have thinking problems such as not knowing whether to trust people, or mistrusting everybody just in case, and even being suspicious, and sometimes being what you might call paranoid for a while. So there's that type of thinking problem, and there's also shutting off your thinking, where you just get on overload with all these emotions and relationship problems, and you might just shut down and shut off and actually not remember parts of your life, parts of your evening, parts of your day, and they have some amnesia for them. Now, if you have these four sets of problems going on, it is natural over time, if you don't have it already, to develop self problems. And a lot of this has to do with sense of self or self-respect. So it has to do with thinking you're a weak person, an unstable person, a bad person, a mean person, a dual personality that keeps flipping back and forth between different types of ways of being with different people, so that you ultimately, over time, start to think of there being a sort of a core problem in yourself. And that gets reinforced every time bad things happen. And of course, one acquires one's sense of self from encounters with the people in the environment over time, beginning with when you're very young. So you'll end up with these five sets of problems. And the good news about that, in some ways, is that even though it may sound like a lot, I'm going through it quickly, that in fact, the theory behind this is that the way to get the life you want to get, the life that would be worth living for you and worth fighting for, is to solve these problems. It isn't something deeper and unconscious and mysterious. It is to solve the emotional relationship, action, thinking, and self problems. And we have skills for every one of these to help you solve those problems. So that's what the skills training is all about. So let me put in the skills just so you're oriented to this. You can sort of see where things go from here in this whole course. For the emotional problems, we have some skills. Try to write this without erasing the others. Emotional regulation skills. Emotion is sort of I don't know, I don't love the term, but it's a technical term, emotional regulation skills, which in a nutshell, what these skills do is allow you or help you to develop a different relationship with your emotions, right? So it doesn't mean you shut off your emotions, shut them down, block them out, get away from them. You live with the emotions. It's kind of how it's like couples therapy between you and your emotions, so that you can develop the skills that you didn't develop for lots of good reasons for relating to your emotions, modifying them to some degree instead of having to take black or white positions about them, okay? And there's lots of interesting skills there. There's a set of skills for relationship problems, which we call interpersonal effectiveness. Skills. And these are, I love these skills. You'll see why when we get to them. But they really are ways to deal with conflict in relationships. And in particular, those conflicts that come out because you want the other person to change, or you want to ask for something. You have an objective. And you want to get it without ruining the relationship or without sacrificing your self-respect. And that's the whole model. How do you get your objectives while keeping a good relationship and while keeping your self-respect? And so that's, and the other half of that is, how do you say no to people that want something from you, but you're not ready to give it? How do you do that skillfully so that you maintain the relationship and you maintain your self-respect? So really interesting set of skills. Third set of skills have to do with helping you with the action problems, and they are called distress tolerance skills. And they're really two types of skills rolled into one package. One type have to do with better accepting reality as it is, so that it isn't always throwing you off and you're not always fighting it, but actually learning to accept it in the moment if there's nothing you can do to change it in the moment. If there's something you can do to change it in the moment in the direction you need, by all means do it. But when you can't, you need a set of skills to hang in there until things can be changed. And these are called, so those are the reality acceptance skills. And they then require that you need ways to tolerate the distress and survive the crisis. And so there's a set of skills called the crisis survival strategies. Finally, and this set of skills covers both self problems and thinking problems. And they are mindfulness skills, or what we call core mindfulness skills, because they are core to the rest of the program. And we teach them again and again. There's a few core mindfulness skills that help you acquire more balance in your relationship to the moment, to your environment, to yourself, more clarity, a greater sense of inner calm and purpose, so you know where you're at instead of being thrown all over the place all the time, and where you get clearer about what's going on inside yourself. It makes you a better detective. Okay, so a whole set of skills that are called core mindfulness skills. These are actually the ones we're going to start with in the next lecture. Okay. If you have questions about this, you'll see, I'll show you in the next lecture, there is a skills manual, a workbook that goes with this, and I'm going to be referencing pages as I go. If you want to get it, it's the skills training handouts and worksheets for dialectical behavior therapy by Marsha Linehan from a couple of years ago. And you can work right through it with me if you want, or else you can just listen to me. Okay? All right. Until next time, everybody, let me turn this off now. I'll see you. Good luck.